First, I want to say Shana Tova. Wish everybody a very sweet, healthy new year. I want to say how exciting it is to welcome you all to our inaugural JWI Women's Impact Network event. Even though we are seeing each other through Zoom, the energy is palpable, which is a testament to the power of what happens when women get together. I'm heidibrodsky, one of the members of our launch committee. Last December, I had the great honor of being recognized by JWI as a woman to watch. This was particularly a special opportunity for me as I had gone to the Women to Watch event for many years, where I was continually inspired by JWI's work, as well as the work of an incredible group of women at each and every event. I'm also so thrilled that this launch is happening with Meredith Jacobs' leadership of JWI. Meredith, if you don't know, was recently named as one of the 50 most influential Jews by the Jerusalem Post. Congratulations, Meredith. I'm beyond proud to know you and to call you my friend. Several years ago, which I can't believe it's been so long, Meredith and I met to talk about JWI and how to bring the powerful and unique experience of Women to Watch to more women. Together, we created and launched She Says, a women's speaker series at the Bender JCC, and engaged hundreds of women to learn and network together. When Meredith became CEO of JWI, she made it a priority to consider how to expand JWI's network and to bring even more women together around the mission of JWI. After many conversations and brainstorming meetings with the other women on our launch committee, we decided to launch the JWin Network. Though we hoped we could launch it in person, we decided not to let COVID hold us back from our purpose at a time when connecting has become more critical than ever. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We are really excited to begin. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Kim Oster-Holstein, the co-founder and chief alchemy officer of Twisted Alchemy, providing award-winning cold-pressed juices and craft mixes for the hospitality industry and home cocktail kits for craft cocktail enthusiasts. I'm one of them. Twisted Alchemy partners with world-renowned restaurant hospitality groups, hotels, and event venues with the mission to elevate spirits. With COVID-19, the company is elevating people's spirits at home with the Quarantine Cocktail Hour and other virtual gatherings, from client cocktail hours and team virtual huddles to the virtual holiday party, offering a toast of inspiration. Kim's a passionate serial entrepreneur, mentor, and business coach. She was named the Entrepreneurial Woman of the Year in 2009 by Chicago Women's Business Development Center, and was recognized with the Women's Business Enterprise National Council Star Award in 2010. She was an inductee in the 2011 Chicago Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame. Kim was honored as a JWI Woman to Watch in 2010. She's a former board chair and on the board of trustees of JWI, and is programming chair and member of the executive committee of Northwestern University's Council of 100. Kim graduated from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism with an MSA and received her BBA in marketing from the University of Texas School of Business. Now to you, Kim.
Heidi, thank you so much. It's just incredible to be here with you all. I'm so moved just seeing all these women from all over the country. We've been waiting for this day and this launch to get this JWI Impact Network started. I think we need to celebrate. Who's up for a cocktail? Can you all hear me okay? Okay, just want to make sure. It's been a long week and it just started, and a long and challenging 6 months. And that's how we came to the theme of this cocktail class. Let's make a lemon drop martini out of lemons. We've all had a lot of lemons in 2020. And in my business, we've truly had a lot of lemons. We were elevating spirits of craft cocktails at bars, restaurants, and hotels around the country with our Twisted Alchemy cold pressed juices. And we had no idea that on March 16th, every customer would close down in one day, which left us with a lot of lemon juice and lime juice, blood orange juice, watermelon juice. So we decided to elevate the spirits of people at home with our cocktail kits and cocktail hours, a toast of inspiration, bringing teams together and adding a meaningful cocktail hour to virtual experiences and gatherings. I hope this elevates your spirits. So Lisa has put Lisa, I'm not, was the recipe posted? I think she's posting it right now so that
Doing it now.
Okay, awesome. She's posting the recipe. So if you'd like to join along, please do. And if you'd like to just watch, that's great too. But we will begin with our making a lemon drop martini out of lemons. So I like to start with the coupe. Now you might ask, I don't know if any of you have, you know the martini glass is the traditional glass for martini. However, that actually was the glass most popular in the 80s and 90s, Carrie Bradshaw and Sex and the City. And, but with the craft cocktail movement, especially in the past 10 years, the coupe is where it's at. And it's elegant and it holds the cocktail without spilling. So it's definitely the glass of choice. So I'm gonna start with the rimming process. And I hope you all can see, I didn't want to be too far away so that you could hear me, but basically what I do for the rimming is I've put some of the lemon juice on some paper towels and just to make a rimming space so that the lemon juice will make it sticky. And then I dip it into some sugar, super fine sugar, to create a beautiful rim. I hope you all can see that. Mm-hmm. And that's gonna get us started. Okay, so then I'm using today Tito's vodka. I'm from Texas and Tito's is a Texas vodka, so I thought I would pay homage to my state where I come from way back. And I'm using, okay, this is the jigger. And the jigger, you can see it's a double jigger. It's so great for measuring all the different ounces, half ounce, 2 ounce. So I'm gonna get everything and put it into a shaker. Now I'm gonna tell you, you do not have to have a shaker to make a great cocktail. You can use a mason jar and put a top on it. I'm using a cobble shaker, which is right here. And then there's also Boston shakers where you have 2 different pieces like this, and you can put one on top of another. But I broke my hand about 2 months ago and I'm recovering, so my shake is off. So I'm going for the cobble shaker today.
Kim, quick question. Do we need ice in the shaker or no?
Yeah. So that's first. First, I was gonna, you know what, let's add some ice. So you'll add some ice to your shaker. Okay. Then we're gonna go for 2 ounces of Tito's vodka. If you wanna make it a little weaker, you can, or heavier. All right.
Says the husband.
Yeah, my bar back is in the back here. Okay, then we're gonna go for, we've got 0.5 ounces of Cointreau. It's an orange liqueur. It has sweet and bitter orange peels with a beet sugar alcohol. It just adds a little more flavor. Cointreau, so we're gonna put half an ounce. And put that into the shaker. All right, next, the Twisted Alchemy lemon juice. Okay, so I must tell you before I pour the lemon juice, the Eureka lemon juice is probably my favorite juice we have. I tend to, every beverage that I don't know, it always is the center of the cocktails I make, with alcohol and spirits or non. And you can even take the lemon juice and add it to your water and put some cayenne and have that in the morning. So you've got lemons are antiviral. They're a great detox. So the lemon it's stellar. And as I'm running through this cocktail today, I just want to mention too, you can leave out the Tito's vodka, as you'll see on the recipe. I've got some of the Fever Tree Club soda that is a great choice. So there's so many versatile ways to create the cocktail, whether it's a spirit-free and non-alc or whether you go for the spirits. So I'm gonna put in an ounce of our Twisted Alchemy Eureka lemon juice. And if you like it more, of a much more lemony flavor, you can add in another half an ounce. I like to go heavy on the lemon. Okay, then we've got 1 ounce of simple syrup. And I did put the recipe on the chat. I love to make my own simple syrups. And it's so fun to create a simple syrup where you can have different herbs and spices. It's so creative in the different ways that you can work with the simple syrups. I actually had created a purple power cocktail for an event recently, and we made a blueberry simple syrup. So, I mean, you can just think of all the fun things that you can do. And then actually the next day, my kids had the blueberry simple syrup on the pancakes. So it's easy to work with, but I made it today, and I'm going to go ahead and put 1 ounce. Yeah, 1 ounce.
That's a monk fruit.
And great. So then once you've got all the ingredients, make sure I didn't forget anything. What did I put? Yes,
Yeah, haven't you?
okay. And you're going to close it up, and everyone get ready for some great shaking. My shaking is really full off. I'd say I shake it about 10 times. Good old shake. Okay. And then pour into your coupe. It's nicely strained, as you can see. And then I like to add a lemon wheel. It's a dried lemon wheel. It's a different look. And then you also can take, for a garnish, you can cut a piece of a lemon peel. It's just another look. And you actually place it on the side. So that is my lemon drop martini. Now, so I just wanted to take, how am I doing on time? Okay, I wanted to take a couple minutes while we're enjoying our cocktails, I wanted to share with you why I love JWI and why I'm excited for this impact network. It was 10 years ago that I was honored as a woman to watch by JWI and went to the annual luncheon, and I was so inspired by the energy and the mission of this organization to empower all women and girls. And I felt really at home with this large community of Jewish women with shared roots and different paths. I knew I wanted to get more involved, and I joined the board, and later I'd be board chair for 3 years. And it's just this past decade's been one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. In my role as board chair, I was able to attend the network launches of the Young Women's Leadership Networks in New York, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Chicago. And I'd see the hundreds of young women, Jewish women gathered, engaging and starting these incredible communities that are all thriving. And I wanted that. So I think that every time that we've ever been in our board meetings and brainstorming, and we talk about it so often when we're at the luncheon and when people hear about JWI, they say, I want to get more involved. I want to be more a part of JWI. And I think it's that energy along with the feeling when I was at these networks and thinking, we want that community for us. That this vision for so long we've been envisioning it, to see it come to life today is so thrilling. So I just wanted to end by making a few toasts. First, I wanted to make a toast to the notorious RBG and for all that she did for women's issues, for equality and justice to pave the way, and also as an inspiring Jewish woman. She's passed us the baton. So join us as we work together for our daughters and granddaughters, nieces, sisters, and all the women and girls who come after us. May her memory be a revolution. And a toast to the JWI Impact Network As we launch this national network of dynamic Jewish women around the country, may our work continue to be a part of that revolution as we elevate women. And a toast to each of you. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this really special day. And perhaps we can make magic out of lemons, from lemon martinis to a national network that will impact our world in a huge way. So cheers, l'chaim to all of you. And now Sharon, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Slotkin. I'm another member of our launch committee of our newly formed Women's Impact Network. Thank you, Kim, so much for showing us how to make that delicious cocktail. I have not done it quite yet, but I'm going to do it as soon as we're all done. And thank you to everybody on this call for joining us at our inaugural event. I'm so excited at how many people we have on tonight's call. As Meredith said, it was originally our plan to all be in a room together tonight. And it's still our hope that when it's safe to do so, we will form local, in-person networks in regions across the country. But for now, we actually all get to be on one call together, and it's amazing to see how many people are here from how many different cities. We want, though, everyone to have a chance to start to get to know women in their region and others who will hopefully become members of our network. So in order to do this, we're dividing everybody out into breakout rooms by region. Each room will have about 15 minutes to introduce yourselves and learn a little bit more about the other women in your region. Each room will have a member of our committee to help get things started. We do ask that you be aware of time. We only have about 15 minutes in the breakout room, and we want to give everybody a chance to say hello. So to start the conversation off, we're asking you to share with the group the ingredient that you feel helped you get through COVID so far. And I can say, I'm sorry, Kim, it wasn't a cocktail, it was wine. Wine got me through COVID, and luckily I have a wonderful guy who was delivering it the whole time. Now you're gonna see on your screen what breakout group you're joining, and please put yourself in gallery mode so you can see the faces of everybody who's here, and share with the group where you're from, your name, and again, a little bit about yourself. And thank you so much, and have fun tonight.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you met some new people and learned something new that others may have done during COVID that you didn't. I can say for our group, it was a lot of outdoors, food, and Schitt's Creek seemed to also be at the top, especially given the Emmys recently. But I know my kids have been watching it with my husband. I may need to go back and watch it. It is wonderful to see so many people here tonight. I personally, as many of you know, I'm a member of many Jewish organizations, but what sets JWI apart, especially under Meredith's guidance, is a belief in women learning from other women. That makes JWI truly unique and is the phenomenal for women from a diversity of professions who can connect with JWI and through JWI. Each event in this brand new network that we are forming, which is wonderful, will feature a women to learn from and women to learn with. While this event was planned before the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's very timely for us to have with us Ellen Stone and Abby Greensfelder, who in their own right have broken through many ceilings in the media industry and will be talking about how women are portrayed in the media and stories that we should be telling about women. So I want to take a few minutes quickly to introduce the two of them. Then they will have a chance to talk, and then we will have about a 15-minute Q&A session. So if you can put questions in Q&A, we will take your questions and as many as we can afterwards. So Ellen Stone is the Executive Vice President of Marketing at Bravo, Oxygen, and Universal Kids, and oversees the development of all brand strategy. One of the shows that she helped create happens to be one of my favorite, and that is Top Shelf. She is also the mastermind behind the two-time New York Times best-selling cookbook, Top Shelf Cookbook Series, which I have downstairs. It's called Top Shelf, The Tour. and Oxygen's entry into CrimeCon, which happens to be my eldest daughter's one of her favorites. She has won numerous awards for her work, holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and a minor in French. My name is French, but please don't try and talk to me, Ellen, unless you want to talk about the Vieux Carré or beignets. From Lehigh University School of Business, and is a graduate of CTAM University at the Harvard School of Business. She was a JWI Woman to Watch in 2011 and currently serves as the chair of JWI Board of Trustees. Welcome, Ellen. Abby Greensfelder is the founder and CEO of Everywoman Studios, a purpose-built media company whose mission is to tell the female-focused stories that might not otherwise be told and can have a positive impact on our culture. She is also the co-founder of Half Yard Productions, and an award-winning production company specializing in the nonfiction series and documentaries, including Say Yes to the Dress for TLC, yes, I used to binge it, How the Shapes Got Their States for History, and The Last Alaskans for Discovery, also one of my quirky favorites. While at Discovery, Greensfelder also launched programs including The Deadliest Catch, I got to meet some of them in Alaska, Mythbusters, and Planet Earth. Abby holds a degree from Yale University and an MBA from Wharton. She serves on the board of Alliance for Women in the Media and is a limited partner in Rethink Impact, a venture firm investing in female-led businesses. Go women. Abby was also one of JWI's Women to Watch honorees in 2011, and I want to thank them both for their time tonight and look forward to hearing all about the media and women. And please don't forget to put any questions you have in the Q&A box.
Thank you for that intro.
Yeah, that was great. How do you want to do this? Should we just chat, or do you want to ask us questions, or?
I want you both to talk a little bit about your role in Women in the Media, and then we're going to take Q&A.
Okay. Abby, you want to go? You want me to go?
You start, but I will say 2011 was a good year because Kim, Ellen, and I, here we all are all these years later, we were all on that stage together.
That's right. Yes, 2011 was a very impressive year.
Yes.
Okay, so I work at NBC Universal, and I'm the head of marketing for Bravo, for E. Hopefully you guys saw the live from the red carpet when there wasn't a red carpet, so that was fun. At Oxygen and at Universal Kids. And one of the through lines for those 4 brands is that we do market to women. So that is one of my specialties, and it is also something that is definitely not a one-size-fits-all type of model. So I came up through advertising and did a lot of things like alcohol, which was really fun. And I did tech, and I did a lot of different things. And I found that one of the most interesting things about marketing is the idea of the behavior, the audience, and all those kind of things. And women are so diverse and so different, and yet there are some through lines about women that are great. So when I got the chance to work first at Lifetime, that was my first foray into television marketing, and now at the 4 brands that I mentioned, the fact that I get to look at the behavior of women and how that audience will come to these different shows has been really, really interesting. At Bravo, we have this little franchise called The Real Housewives. You guys may
Sorry, I didn't mention it.
In fact, Abby was part of it for a while. And you know, it's a franchise that when you mention it, people have very definitive reactions. Both, that is a fun, great franchise. When I'm stressed out, I can go, I can watch it. It's like all the fun and drama without this emotional hangover. I love it. And then I have my brother, and he's like, how dare you put these women on the air? So there are 2 different, very, very different types of reactions that I get to The Real Housewives. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about my job, is that what I do is just supposed to get a reaction. What I do is supposed to have people look and feel good and entertain. It's not supposed to be a deep-seated reaction, and that's one of the things that I love about the programming I do. we're not making a big statement for women. We're not doing things like HBO, which one is it? Prime's Miss America, which I love, by the way, and you should all watch it. But it's a very fun and supposed to be light way to watch TV. But I do get a lot of people that say to me, you know, you put on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, which is our biggest franchise, by the way. Well, it was until Below Deck topped it.
Wow.
And huge franchise. And they said, you know, those people are pulling wigs. Those people are throwing drinks. I could have picked any of the franchises, by the way, because they all threw drinks and they all pull wigs. But, you know, how are you showcasing this on television? And the way, and Abby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you were there kind of the beginning. You had DC, right?
I did.
You had, that was a good one.
Yeah. Woo!
Almost got the government involved in my life. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, one of the housewives of DC.
They were involved in my life.
They decided to just walk into the inauguration party at the White House.
It was the state dinner.
Yes, the infamous state dinner.
The infamous state dinner. Yes, that was great. Anyway, you know, so people say, why are you showcasing this behavior? And the way that the franchise started was really as an anthropological look at a community of women, and to look and see and just be fly on the wall. And one of the things that we pride ourselves is that while we do edit the stories together, we're not trying to create a storyline for the women. We're trying to tell the story that they're actually already telling. And women are so dynamic and so interesting that they oftentimes let us do that. In fact, when the talent is fresh, it's some of the best stuff we have. Once they get really into the series and they know they need to have more drama, that's when you have someone from New York City who throws a fake leg. She's no longer on the show anymore, because that's not what we're looking for. So I think one of the things I love is that we're trying to tell a real story in reality TV. I'm saying it's reality TV, you guys. So we're trying to tell as real story we can, without forgetting that what we're meant to do is entertain. It's very different from what other people are doing with the media. Like the RBG documentary, I love it. Had a very different purpose than the Real Housewives of New York City docudrama. So that's kind of what we do. Well, I market it.
But what I'd say, I mean, just jumping into that, which is great, great intro. And I didn't actually realize you started at Lifetime, which is so interesting. Because when I started in the business, actually my dream was to be the president of Lifetime. I like Carol Black was like my,
that's what
I was like, when I was a youngin', there weren't many women executives running networks at all. And Carol Black, who was this woman executive who ran Lifetime, Lifetime was the #1 rated network. Do you remember that? Is that when you worked for Lifetime?
I was there.
Okay, because of Ellen. So
obviously,
one of the things that I think is interesting, and actually sort of part of the underpinning in many ways of starting this new business, which I've done, is that I always felt, because my background, as you talked about briefly in the intro, is that I had worked at a network, and then I went and started my own production company. So I went from being sort of a buyer, if you will, to a developer and seller and producer of ideas. And when you're at the network, like as Ellen is and has done in her career coming out of advertising, whether you're on the programming side or not, you really do learn to think like a marketer, because in the media industry, the shows are the product, right? So in, like for Kim's brand, it's the drinks, right? If you're at a network, you're selling the programs. They kind of become your brand. And I always thought, when I was at the network, mind you, I was programming a male skewing channel, but I thought it was really interesting because the way we at Discovery at the time priced the audience, the female audience was discounted relative to the male audience. And when I was there, I always thought, that's odd. And I had, gone back to business school, and I think I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial brain. So I thought, well, that's an opportunity, because I think there's always a gap between in the market and in business between the reality and where the market is. And I think that what's been interesting to me about Bravo, both as someone who was at a network looking at as another network person, and then being a producer working for the network. And I use Bravo as an example because I think what Bravo did was to monetize the female audience in a way that it had not been monetized. And actually, I think that's really important, right? Because as women, you know, it's important that people see us as the powerful consumer that we are. And one of the things that I've been talking about with this new business that I've started is that women, and we've done a lot of research on this, you know, women generally make most purchasing decisions. You know, and this is across categories, and categories that we wouldn't necessarily think is sort of female categories, like finance, for example, or cars. You know, we think as in cars, we think of that as sort of being male targeted advertising. So one of the things that I think is interesting is that as women, we tend to be interested in and demand authenticity in storytelling. And I think part of the reason the Real Housewives resonates is that the best characters are characters that don't have filter. Now, whether you like them or not, they are like totally authentically themselves. And as someone who's developed shows that are sort of more reality shows and has also developed more documentaries, and right now I'm working on sort of more RBG-like content, sort of stories by and about women. But I think that what women as consumers crave is authentic stories, because we have a good bullshit meter. And my thesis, and part of what I think, and I'd be interested, Ellen, what you think, because you're sort of the marketing gurus, is, and I'm sure you talk to your, you know, super fans and your viewers all the time, and they're very active on social and all that stuff, is if you'd concur with us that, like, women as viewers, like, we're very determinative in how we assess what's real, and we really gravitate to authentic people and stories. And I think we see this in the people in our culture that we're attracted to and raise up. And I think women have a lot of power in this, power that isn't yet totally realized still by the ad industry, by the corporations that are selling to the consumer. I think, by the way, this will catch up, but I think Bravo is one of the first brands that recognized women as like the super consumer and managed to make the brand and the channel an upscale channel and basically priced it as such in the market. And I think that's how, as women, as consumers, we kind of win, is when we're not just, that we can sort of move the market as well as we can decide then what stories we want to be told, and that you as advertisers and programmers, you need to do stuff that resonates with us. Otherwise, we're not playing, you know?
Right. Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, the way that Bravo is priced, first of all, we are more authentic storytellers, and when we're not authentic, so for example, I mentioned that Atlanta Housewives.
Ellen, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Because everyone on the call is not savvy on the advertising world. When y'all are talking about price, will you describe, I know what you're talking about because I've been there, but help people understand what you're talking about when you talk about pricing?
Yeah, so when we're talking about, when we sell to an advertiser, we sell like a 30 minute, wow, that would be big, a 30-second spot. So you've probably heard on the Super Bowl that one 30-second spot at this point is going for $5 million. Probably, well, now it's going for nothing, but it was going for like $5 million. So the price tag is based on two things. One is the amount of people that you can get to that show, but more importantly, the people that you want to get to that show and the amount of shows you have. So on Bravo, it's one network. And what we were able to do is we were able to get an audience that is highly desirable to the advertiser. So we were selling them adults who were in the 18 to 49 range, but who had incomes of above 125,000, which in television is very big because television, everyone has it. So you can imagine that the median income for television is in the 40,000s. And so what Bravo was able to do is we were able to bring in a female audience of these huge decision makers, people who are choosing if they're going to have cable, even the people who are buying the car, what Abby was saying. And we put a price tag, which is called a CPM, but who cares? And we put a price tag that's higher for a Bravo show, because the audience that we can deliver to our advertisers is so much more desirable in terms of the women that are coming in than some of the other audiences.
And Ellen, you have to tell me, is Bravo have the highest pricing amongst cable networks? I think it probably does.
We have a, yes.
So if you can imagine that there was a time when the highest, and maybe it still is, ESPN, basically the male skewing sports
Bravo is
channel.
known as ESPN for women.
Yeah. So Bravo came into the market, and I really think was the first network that said, we can create kind of a premium female driven
A cluster
brand
of
that can move the market.
Right.
And I think what is interesting about that, you talk about, again, there's a whole mix of shows. You've got Housewives, Top Chef, etc. But the notion of what in the industry we call premium content, which now if you watch Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, that those channels, I think, are trying to create this must-have content. And I think what's interesting for us as women is how we can sort of see ourselves authentically in those stories and move markets in a way where I really do think Bravo was a pioneer in that, creating that space. And I think, I mean, I as a producer am interested in very broad stories that reach everybody, but that have purpose inside. So I'm really interested in the idea of women as themselves as they are. And that could be characters that are crazy that you might say, well, that person's crazy. Or to give you an example, I don't know how many of you saw Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat on Netflix, which was a chef-driven show, but happened to have a woman. But, you know, she wasn't made up for, she really came as she was. Mm-hmm. And so I think that audiences increasingly, especially younger audiences, really gravitate towards this idea of authenticity. And it's something that Bravo came to early and created really premium value around. And I think as women and as storytellers that we can kind of demand that of content. Because the more we can see sort of all of us in media, the more flexibility we have as women to be all of us, you know, and I think that's really important.
Right.
Do y'all see your women-centered shows, Say Yes to the Dress and Real Housewives series, commanding more advertising dollars or less?
It really depends on the individual show and the audience we're able to. So Top Chef, which is a dual audience show, it's about 65% women, 45% men. That is a very high premium show because of the audience that comes to it. Real Housewives of New York City, do not tweet any of this, by the way. Real Housewives of New York City, which is one of our highest audience, I'll get a higher price point for New York City because of the audience than I will say for an OC. And so it really does depend on the show itself and the audience that I get there. I will say there are more women watching television than there are men. It is why ESPN was able to command a bigger seat for two reasons. ESPN was able to command a bigger cost, and one is because it's harder to get men other than sporting events, but that's where you get them. And because the people who are the heads of the people who are the advertisers and clients are all white men, so they understand the sports programming. So what's happening now also is that more women are actually becoming the clients, and they're becoming the head advertisers, and they're now understanding more the importance of women. So with that change, that I'm not walking into a room anymore when I'm selling my products to a room full of men. I am now walking into a much more, there's still a lot to be done, but I'm walking into much more diverse rooms where I'm speaking to many more women instead of, because I was in advertising, and I remember I was going to a car dealership. It was me and my boss, we were both women. And we walked into a whole room of men and they were like, we don't believe a word that you're saying. Now, this was a couple of years ago. And at one point, she looked at me and she said, there's nothing we can do because these men don't understand a female perspective. They don't understand that when people are going to make that decision on the car, if it's a family, it's a woman that's going to probably make the ultimate decision.
I think
that has changed so much over the years that if I walk into I walked into Budweiser, trying to sell Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, and I think there were more women in that room than men at Budweiser, and it was such an easier way to speak because to speak.
Well, I think like this is such an interesting and good point, because the business of telling stories is also about gatekeeping. And it's about who decides what stories you tell, who decides what messages you make. And I do think that the gatekeeper mix is changing. And just to give you an example of a project I'm working on now, which is exactly equivalent to what Ellen's talking about in the production realm, is we're doing a feature doc now that happens to be in the women in sports space, and by feature documentary. And one of the things that I've been working on with my new company is what I call content deserts, which are basically places and spaces that we just don't see women in at all.
Awesome.
Which I would include, having worked and run and program Discovery Channel, the outdoors. Now, we all talked about how we're in the outdoors. Like, when have you last seen a show with a woman in the outdoors surviving or doing anything? Women in sports, women in science and tech. Like, I program Discovery Channel and Science Channel. Nothing. So, and part of the reason that I believe that these are content deserts is because the thinking goes, well, these are male skewing channels, therefore men are watching, and therefore men don't want to see women on their male channel. Well, as women, we've been watching men on our female channels. And I think that stories are universal. So one of the things I've been working on is how do we put women into these content desert spaces? So one of the projects I'm developing right now is about women in racing. And car racing. Like F1 racing. So we're actually, this is a space where women, it's one of the few sports where women and men compete equally because you're in a car, right? Yet no women has ever won F1. Actually, one was in F1 40 years ago. So this makes it interesting to me because it's a space we just don't see women. But what's interesting about it is if I went and pitched that idea to any number of networks, I think it would be impossible for me to sell, because the thinking would go, and I've made a ton of car shows for male skewing networks, but they'd say, well, what guy wants to watch women trying to make it in F1? They never buy that show. So our approach is we're talking to brands that are trying, the Sirius XMs, Toyotas, Acuras, Rocket, the companies that are in the business of racing, that are trying to get more gender and diversity in general in racing, talking to NASCAR. And the greater likelihood is one of the brands will finance that documentary, and then we're going to sell it at a film festival. And I think it'll eventually get on an Amazon, a Netflix or something, but we're going to have to work twice as hard to engineer the business of it, because the current way and the current thinking does not line up with wanting that story on a male network. So that's
Abby,
sort of the business I'm in, is of thinking about the economics differently, because the economics still is not where it totally needs to be.
So Abby and Ellen, how can we as women help drive that conversation, or can we? I mean, having more women in the media and telling more women's stories, I'm going to assume, is very important to all 150 of us that are here tonight.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, in my realm, one of the things I'm interested in is docs, because in a world
documentaries, everyone.
Yeah, documentaries.
Not docudramas. That's my world.
Yes,
right.
But it's part of the reason actually I decided to leave my other company and focus full time on this new venture, because I think that in a world where we don't believe news anymore, right? Like, what do we believe? Documentaries. And you look at something like this RBG doc, which if people saw is amazing. It was viewed by 20 million people and was very financially successful, and will be watched by millions and millions and millions of children for years to come, and tells a story and sees a woman in a place where she's changing history, right? So one of the things I'm looking at is actually raising money for a fund that would go into funding female-focused docs. That's one thing I'm doing. And then I've also started an accelerator to support women content creators in the industry that I came up in, which is nonfiction, reality, and trying to get more women to be in a position to run companies or own their own IP and develop ideas. Because I think as women, when we develop the stories, we're more inclined to put women in places that present them as they are, whatever that is. And I think that, so the more women that are in that ecosystem, the better. So I think for this group, like, I mean, I'm interested, I'm not there yet, but when I get to the place of getting this fund going, to come to groups like this and say, hey, do people wanna put some, you know, invest some in that and support that? I mean, I think it's harder for women and women of color, which is another big thing I'm working on, to get into these pitch rooms than it is for men. And I'm one of few women running a production company in my business. And I've had success, and my next chapter is about giving back to expand that access, because the stories won't get to more diverse till the people that are making them are more diverse. That's what I think.
So Ellen,
That was
some of what you've done, especially Real Housewives series, some people would say, and there may be women on this call tonight that would say, but you're portraying women in such a negative, or women are portraying themselves in such a negative
100%.
way. How do you balance that with the stuff that Abby's doing?
So 100%. The housewives are so polarized. My brother gets furious at me every time. But here's the point of it. And I will say that where the housewives started and where they are now is a little bit different. It was in the beginning, before people knew what the housewives are, the authenticity, and they're not that they're not authentic now, but it was a different perspective. There were fights and there was drama and there was all that, but there was also very real stories about a woman whose son was embarrassed by her and didn't want her in to meet his friends. It had nothing to do with her fighting or anything like that. And those stories were told. And we had people that were saying, listen, it's a housewife, I understand, but it helped me understand why my son might not want me to come to his college right now. It's not that he didn't love her, it's just that wasn't where his world was. And so the housewives, well, yeah, they've gotten a little bit out of control. And a lot of that has to do with the women who are watching it. When they're not out of control, we're not getting a rating. So a lot of the reasons for the housewives' success and the way that the housewives storytelling has happened is because we get measured every single day on how well women, primarily on the Women's Network, women love the show. And we know that if it's a quiet show, it's not going to get a rating because women aren't going to come back for it. So while
I also really think, and it's funny because my husband is a huge soccer fan, like Premier League British football.
Mm-hmm.
And I, by association, have gotten totally roped into it. And I've been watching this show. It's a docu-series about British football. And one of the narrators in it talks about how football is the way that men express and people express their emotion. I actually personally think that's why Housewives is successful. Like, people watch shows with they choose with their heart, not their head.
Right.
We don't watch shows we're not like, oh, let me think about what I want to watch. You watch someone because you're like, it's like this, it's a heart thing. And I think part of the Housewives is this release of emotion. Like, you're watching somebody else play out the emotions that you in your life can't express. Or, so it's like, that's my own personal belief. And I think that the question for women is like, right, there are all these ways that we can entertain, and this is one of them. And I think the best characters that relate on these shows are ones that are in touch with their emotions. Like, there's no filter. And I think that's part of why we as viewers find it fascinating, because we're like, I can't do that. Like, I can't express my emotions like that, but it's a way for me to feel that through you.
And the other thing about the shows is, again, they're not making a statement. There's nothing political about them. There's nothing, it's not meant to say, this is how you should use your life, because this is how we use our life. We run our lives. It's really meant to show a slice of people's lives and to entertain. It is not a thoughtful program. It is an entertaining program. And that's what we're about. And it is not meant to harm society. It is meant to entertain society. And when, we've had people I'm in New York, and we went to the 92nd Street Y, and people go up and debate the harm of the housewives. And finally, I remember Andy Cohen said, it is a TV show. It is fundamentally, elementary a TV show that is meant to entertain the country. It is not meant to tell you how to live your lives. And to Abby's point, it is meant to tap an emotion, or let you see an emotion, or let you see something relevant that might not be exactly how you live, and let you release. And I think that's why it has resonated so much. And that's why it shocks me still. I have people saying, I could be a housewife. Okay, maybe you could. It was like when we were doing Queer Eye, my brother's like, can you get me on Queer Eye? And I'm like, no, because you're my brother. Just remember, if someone wants you on a reality show, just say no. Just say no.
Exactly. Absolutely. So both of your answers to that kind of go along one of the questions that were posted, and it's about why haven't there been any reality shows about people doing good? We've got this huge social justice movement right now. You've got the Me Too movement right now.
That is a documentary. Mm-hmm. That's not an arcing show. I
think there are some arcing. I mean, Queer Eye is a show that does good. I think there are, Say Yes is a show that does good. I think there are shows that it depends where you're turning your lens, like human transformation shows. I think that,
but they're harder to break out a human transformation show.
Right.
Because you can't get the advertising dollars and you can't get the production.
No, because it is harder. Because they're just not always as exciting. I mean, one of the earliest transformation shows was the show called The Swan, which was.
Oh gosh.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And it did incredibly well in the ratings, until people realized, like, wait, what this is saying is not great. And then it kind of just petered out.
I mean, I think on the premium, what I'd call like premium, or the move towards direct to consumer, which Bravo is part of the Peacock, like the NBC Universal has, every network is having its own, how do my brand talk to you, the consumer? And I think that they can move in our industry has opened up a space for nonfiction content, really, especially documentaries that do tell.
That's what I was saying, the documentary.
Yeah, more like weighty stories, and some of them could be arced, or it could be, and there is this really
specials.
There's this very emerging form, not just the watching of it, but also the business of it. And it's part of the reason why I've started this company, because I think it both is, there's good business in it, but it allows you to move the needle for women in culture through that commercial white space, for lack of a better word, which is basically docs and nonfiction series and content telling these stories. And a bunch of those have been highly commercial, but it's in specific pockets, and it doesn't do the same job of the workhorse week in, week out as a Real Housewives, where you're pumping out, 20 episodes. So it's almost a different model of production. And what I see in the industry is sort of this high, what I call like the high-low polarity. It's, you have kind of more expensive event content, these high production values, expensive, and then more a need for sort of high volume. And that's partly driven by the industry as a whole. But I think because of that move, there's an opportunity to do more these sort of big impact pieces at the high end. There's more of a market for that. So I think, that in my new business is where I'm focused solely, because it's like the means by which I can achieve this goal. And also there's a business and commercial imperative for it, while there is also a real market imperative for sort of long running, super entertaining formats. And I do think women have a role as consumers in moving both of those markets.
The other thing I will say is the time right now has opened up doors to do good types of programming.
Yeah.
So for example, Bravo just did a series called Race in America. It's more than just a movement. And what we did was we took a lot of our Black talent and we actually talked to them about the moment that was happening right now. And it was, we were able to like give them a voice that a lot of people hadn't really seen. So one of our talent, this woman, Portia, her father marched with Martin Luther King and was a very big activist. Now watching The Real Housewives of Atlanta, you wonder if she actually could string a sentence together. But on the special, you actually saw a woman who was very articulate, very had a point of view. And the times that we're in has enabled us to do more of that. A lot of, not just the news networks, but a lot of a lot of the entertainment networks are able to actually create programming that's more meaningful.
Right.
And important.
Right. That's part of, I think, the audience demanding, saying like, we want to see some of that. We want to see, so it's the audience demanding it, the brands want to present themselves in that way.
And that's another thing that when you were saying, what can we do? Go on social media and ask for it. That's how come Bravo was given the liberty of actually doing this special. We're doing another one with Black talent on the election and what their views of the election, whether it's, how they've gone to the polls, not being able to get the polls, gerrymandering, all that kind of stuff. And it's through social media, it's through, primarily through social media, but it's through giving a voice to what you're thinking. So if you're thinking that these housewives are too much, let us know, because we always want to make sure that it's entertainment and it's not going to a place where we've gone to.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And brands pay attention to,
very much so,
consumers. Like, it's all about that. So I think as women, our power is our voice. And whether it's what you tune into and watch, that in media, that's part of what your voice is, or literally what you put out there, what books you buy, what podcasts you listen to, the audience drives the future choices. So the more as women we vote by what we find entertaining, we'll see more of that. That's what I believe.
I do too.
Wonderful. This has been great. I'm going to open the floor. We've got a couple of questions that are very pertinent to everything going on. I think Ann Tishkoff, if you want to unmute yourself. You and Jeannie Milbauer basically asked the same question. And
you can just read off the question if you want.
I'm here. I can ask.
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
So I was curious to hear from both of you how COVID, more you maybe Ellen, because I think some of the programming we started to see that Bravo's advertising mentions COVID, but what do you see happening in the near term? And then are things in production currently, or have things halted?
Oh, we're in production. Everything's in production to the point that we can be. Abby can also talk to this. I will say it is really, really hard. The shows that you're going to see at the end of the fall, the shows that are currently in production and early next year, you will notice COVID in them in reality, because that is what people are talking about and how people are living. It is much harder. It's more expensive to produce a show right now. If you go into a show, you are testing. One person goes COVID and we're producing in kind of pods kind of things. You hit a COVID person, that pod goes down. You might have to stop that entire show for, whatever the quarantine is. But we're absolutely in production. It's also why you're seeing more what we're calling Zoom shows. So some of our Real Housewives reunions were Zoomed. We were able to quarantine some, so we were able to actually do, I think it was New York, was all together, socially distanced all together. But we have, like, on E, I also have E, and we do a show called Celebrity Game Face with Kevin Hart. And that's a Zoom show. He's calling people and they're all on Zoom, and it's a really fun game. I don't know, would that have come to be if it wasn't for the fact that we can't get everybody in a studio? But right now what's happening is we've had enough time that people are quarantining together. And I have to say, it's a little weird to see a show right now and there are people together, because you're thinking, have they quarantined? It's like, it's weird, but it's hard, but we're doing it. Abby, are you in production?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, some of the docs I'm doing right now it's same thing. It's real, right? So it's like there was a period where we couldn't be with people and we're doing interviews remotely. What I will say is that this is also sort of changing the industry insofar as we've had shoots that were directed by our director on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Shoot was on the West Coast with a director of photography, so a camera person that was on the West Coast, and it's all directed over a computer by the person on the East Coast. Yeah. So, like, horror is the mother of invention in the sense. And then the other thing I'd say is that all of post-production is happening remotely. So, like, Half Yard Say Yes Address, which takes an enormous amount of edits to make that show, and they're all editing in sequence. All of those editors went home. There's a protocol in most production companies I know. During COVID, all the editors have been editing from home. And I think
all my editors are home.
Yeah. When I started Everywoman Studios pre-COVID, though, I envisioned it as a virtual production studio, meaning we were going to be, I'm in DC, but all the creatives we're working with on the projects can be anywhere, because that's the nature of the business now. And I think COVID has borne that out. I think you won't have like these huge post-production facilities and things, because it's a creative industry and people can work where they are. So that has been good, where I think it will also, I think, democratize the industry a bit, where anybody who's talented, no matter where you are, it makes maybe LA, New York less of a hub that way. If you're a good editor, for example, you could work on a show in your house or so that's kind of interesting.
I will say,
Abby, what about content and stories? Will COVID be figuring in all of them?
Right. Like, we're going to have to watch that retrospectively, and it's like, not another.
Right.
I do think there will be some of that, like Ellen was saying, I'm sure all the housewives that were shot during COVID.
They're all in COVID.
It's like, we're going to all go through it all over again.
Yeah.
I think what I hear from networks, initially there was a rush of kind of, let's get our COVID shows. And now I think it's more, we just want to be entertained.
Yeah. We're just trying to figure out what we can do.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to make a COVID show. The goal is to make really good entertaining. And hopefully not everything's going to be COVID. But right now, for a docudrama, that's what they're talking about, So there's going to be a lot
I think that, like everybody here, you turn to TV for escapism too. And so do we want to tune in and see people living the life that we're living with our one ingredient of wine and our, you know, whatever it is we need to cope. No, we want to see like somebody on a beach with like a fabulous, you know, or whatever. So I think there will be a move to try and have less.
The one thing I will say about the COVID of it all is that I want to go back to my office, and now I work at 30 Rock, so it's a nice office. Mm-hmm. I do think that the workplace is a little bit, in my mind, a little bit more productive and creative when you're all in the same room. Yeah. I like the Zoom of it all. It's great, and I've reconnected with people I never thought that I would connect with. But I have to say, I do miss some of I have an idea, let me just walk next door and brainstorm it out. Yeah. So I think there is some loss on creativity. That's very true. And effectiveness. I want to go back to I probably never will, but I would love to go back to my office. And
I got kicked off, so I don't know who asked this question, but there was a question about was there ever a storyline you were uncomfortable sharing?
Of course. Yes, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. There have been multiple storylines. So marketing and production, one of the big things at Bravo, my boss is like out of control right now. Sorry. One of the things about Bravo is I have created very different rules for what can go into the promotion and a lot less flexible. I am known as very precious to my compatriots at the office. For example, there isn't cursing in promos on Bravo. There isn't, you know, some of our shows, you get very close to seeing sexual moments. That's not what's going to be on the we allude to it, and we'll show some fighting and stuff. But yes, the promos are much more, I'm going to say, precious than the shows.
Well, also your promos are running across different channels and things like that. So you might be in a different environment, whereas your Bravo audience is already pre-subscribed to, I know what I'm getting and I've signed up for it. So that, I think you're being sensitive to the audience there and being savvy.
And we're only 30 seconds, so we can't put context around half the stuff. So we're very careful. There are times when a storyline will go out and we will send it to our inclusion officer, our diversity officer. Mm-hmm. We do that a lot. We work with GLAAD because we actually, you know, people are human on our shows and they'll say things and it'll be wrong. And we want to make sure that we're not purposely going out there with something that is just offensive and there's no reason to have it in the show. So we do check those things, and there are things that don't make air. Absolutely. And there are things that make air and makes me sad, but don't, that's not a quotable thing.
So I don't know how many young women we have here today, but for women coming up in the business and a lot of our daughters or granddaughters, what do you think is the most powerful position in your career field right now? Is it a producer? Is it in the intellectual property area? Is it an agent, a writer, an actor? Where would you push women today to go into?
Oh, there are so many opportunities right now for women. There are more and more television executives, although at my company we just lost one of ours, but you know, talent have voices, which is amazing. Unfortunately, some of them abuse those voices. I think that go into whatever you love and just go as far as you can go. I started in advertising, which is what I thought I loved. And then I saw television and I went much farther in television because that was my true love. I think women right now, I see them, my boss, my boss's boss, and my boss's boss are all women. I think there are so many opportunities right now, especially in entertainment, especially in marketing. Go for it. You know, I don't think there's I wouldn't just pigeonhole that. What do you think, Abby?
I would say, yeah, I think actually it's a really great time for women because I think as an industry, it's the first time, I'd say in the last couple of years, that the industry has raised its hand and said, we've not been good enough.
Right.
And tried to strive for both on the brand side, advertising, gender parity, like in the companies that are making the ads, there's been a real push. Yep. Where there's a real lack of women is in honestly the making of content, the directing of movies, the directing of high-end content. Interestingly, there's more like on the, especially within cable. Cable was a real place in the industry that was very democratized. A lot of women rose up in cable, and as the industry grew, so did women's voices in the power of the industry, because cable grew kind of like hand over fist over the course of a decade. And I think, I mean, I happen to think like content production is interesting because there's a lot of need and opportunity for women directors, creators, and women of color as directors, creators, filmmakers, producers, that kind of thing. I think networks want that. They know that they need to buy content from different and diverse voices.
And it's hard because there aren't a lot of women that are going into it versus a lot of men.
No.
And so there are, you know, we want to hire women, we want to hire diverse, and we don't get the application. So that's what I would just say.
Is that, sorry, Ellen, is that because women, again, given the Me Too moment, are concerned about going in? They don't know if they can climb the ladder. What's been your biggest challenge?
I'm not totally sure. The Me Too moment is new. I mean, it's like, when did it start? 3 years ago, which was the real Me Too. And I have to say, total wake up call, and has been so positive for my industry, because let's face it, Harvey Weinstein is my industry, who's been in a room with him. It's not that. I'm not sure what it is, but like when I look to find an editor and a producer, and I look at my application stack, I would say at least 75% of editors are men.
Yes.
And
same with directors, DPs, like in the production industry as a whole, the actual production side of it. And this is, I know this because I've been working on this, and my whole effort has been, like, I spend a lot of my time now talking to women filmmakers, diverse women filmmakers, cinematographers, editors, etc. I think part of it is actually, as women in the industry, first of all, there were a lot of less people in those roles, so we don't see the people, so then we think we shouldn't go into it, number one. Number two, these tend to be really hands-on, craft-oriented roles, and I think that, you know, I've seen, especially something like cinematographers, women thinking, well, is this going to be a manageable career? Like if I want to have kids, if I want to be, same with editing, potentially long hours, that kind of thing, less flexibility. I do think though that, you know, as people that run the companies and run the teams and so forth, thinking differently about work and how that's done. And I think this, like COVID with virtual and everything else, has opened up possibilities for women in these craft type roles where it is easier. And then I think, you know, a lot of these programs like the Accelerator are started, others in other craft things does enhance, you know, if you have someone who's sort of your mentor, who when people are looking for jobs can say, oh, I can't do this, but call this person. And because the way that a lot of the job sourcing happens is from the usual suspects, and those have tended to be men. And so there's recidivist hiring. So it's all those things. And
pre-COVID, I was starting to do a college tour where I was trying to go into marketing and go in and talk to the marketing classes and talk to women specifically in those classes about the opportunities in television. Because I think in college, marketing is female, but television isn't seen that way. So it's weird.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you both very, very much for your wisdom and for you pushing that ceiling that you have pushed throughout your career. As we close, my last question really is, what do you recommend for women and girls that want to get into the business? What's that feeling that they have to push, and what's been your hardest thing to overcome as women in the business?
I mean, I will start with this. I feel like Ellen and I had some of this convo before at one of the drinks or something back when we were doing it. But I mean, one great thing that young women have, they're so digital savvy and social media savvy and tech savvy that I think if I were a young woman out in the industry now, I would just absolutely, that might be the way that I get in.
Yeah.
And if I got in an entry level, I would surely go out of my way to add value in those ways, because you'll make yourself indispensable to the people that you're working for.
Right.
And I think that I see this with my own kids, the ways in which they consume and make media is so facile that I think that like just getting in and then doing more than your job entails, especially in those realms, is a great opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, that we have had this conversation, so that
we have
kind of my answer, but yeah, it's well, and networking. So it's hard to find careers, but talk to everyone and find out who they know in even an adjacent field that you like, and get them to get you a conversation. And it's so different right now in this day and age. People are so much more willing.
That's true.
Take the time and speak to up and comers. I know I am. I put a certain amount of time a week to have at least 1 to 2 calls with an up and comer that's not my job. And I think a lot of people are doing that. In COVID, it hasn't, people haven't been really reaching out as much, but networking. Just find a way to get in, because once you meet that person, first you can understand whether or not that's the career path you want, or if there's a career path adjacent that you want. And then once you get in, just do more. Digital, social, especially for us old fogies who don't have the facility. Just me, I'm just talking about me. The facility on the social media as some of the more younger people do.
Right.
One thing I'd say too, and I'm always impressed, I mean, I tell this to my own kids, but also this is really for really young folk, but I'm always impressed when the person contacts me themselves.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like they've done their homework, and it's like, here, I've thought in my industry, it's like, here's an idea of mine.
Right.
I mean, I'm in the business of ideas, and if someone brings me a good idea, I'm like, ooh. So, I think if this is a creative industry, and if you bring an idea, it also shows you're willing to share and you're vulnerable and you've done the hard work. So I always think that's a good idea.
I want to thank you two again, and I want to apologize. There are a couple of questions we didn't get to. I was kicked off at one point and lost all the questions. So I encourage you to reach out to Abby and Ellen. Thank you so much for your time tonight, for your involvement in JWI, and I am going to turn this over to Stephanie.
Well, hello, and thank you so much. Ellen and Abby, that was terrific. That was an amazing discussion, and I know I speak for everyone when I say that there's a lot to think about and get excited for. I loved hearing about both of your experiences and your backgrounds and the importance of women in your careers and in the industry, and the fact that women are such a powerful consumer and subject. But I will say, I think, frankly, the way you two complement and support each other is amazing and a good example of how women really do work together. So I thank you, and what a pleasure. I am Stephanie Nashman, and I too am on the Network Launch Committee. I'm so happy to be a part of today's inaugural event. And before I introduce Meredith, the brains and true spirit responsible for the network, Meredith asked that I share what led to my involvement with JWI and the Women Impact Network. So I met Meredith in the May of 2019 at the Federation Bonbon and Bingo event, which, by the way, coincidentally, Sharon I met that day also, who is also a member on this committee. And I was placed at a table with Meredith. And at the time, Meredith was preparing to move into her current role as CEO of JWI and was bursting at the seams with intelligence and goodness and creativity. And while JWI was familiar to me because I knew some people who had been involved, my mother, who's sitting next to me, and but I had never attended the Woman to Watch Gala, which undeniably is probably one of the most exciting and energizing events for women in DC. But I didn't know too much about the organization or its leadership. So for those of you who know Meredith, and for those of you who do not know Meredith yet, you should know that you're in for a real treat. She's a force. She's an inspiring leader. She's smart, accomplished, spiritual, dedicated, and without ego. She's family focused, mission driven, and a connector. She's an award-winning journalist and the former editor-in-chief of the Washington Jewish Week. She's an author and has co-authored with both her son and her daughter. And as was mentioned earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again, she was recently named to be one of the top 50 most influential Jews by the Jerusalem Post. So anyway, getting back to my introduction to Meredith. At the time, I learned several things that we have in common. We both have kids at GW, go Colonials, and we both have been making the same recipes from the Modern Jewish Mom's Guide to Shabbat. The funny part is that she's actually the author of the book. Well, at some point, Meredith suggested that my daughter get involved with the Young Women's Leadership Network. And so my daughter and I met her for a quick coffee on campus. And when we did, Meredith did what she does best, which is connecting. But not only did she connect with my daughter, her infectious enthusiasm and the nature and the description of the mission and the projects that JW was involved in hooked me. And at the end of the conversation, I was jonesing to get involved too. Because for years, I and many of my friends and peers and people I know have been searching for an opportunity to get involved with an organization that makes a difference in our local and global communities and encourages self-development. We've all known the importance of volunteerism, and we've imparted in our children the value of service and social justice and building networks with like-minded friends. But as adult women, we still want to do this, but we don't know how to do this, to create and connect and use our powerful voices to develop networks for ourselves. So this JWI Women Impact Network is intended to do just that. This network is a social support. It's good for us. It's good for our community. It's fun. And it's being brought to life by Meredith Jacobs and JWI. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the CEO of JWI, the amazing Meredith Jacobs.
Oh my God, Stephanie. I am overwhelmed by that introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sitting here and first of all, I'm so joyful being in this virtual room with all of you. This has been a dream, I think, since 2007, when I first went to Women to Watch, because my dear friend, Rabbi Susan Shankman, was being honored. And Sue had been the rabbi who kind of read through my Shabbat book and made sure it was halakhically correct. And I wanted to thank her. And she was being honored that year. And I went not knowing anything about JWI. And my children were very young at the time, and before the luncheon started in the lobby, JWI had displays of their work, and among the work was a program for young teens, one called Strong Girls and one called Good Guys, and it was teaching young teens what it meant to be in a healthy relationship before they even really started dating. And I was so overwhelmed, not only by the amazing women who were being honored, but by the mission of the organization. And I said, I need to be involved. And more importantly, I need to learn more so I can teach my children. And I have to tell you, and I'm not talking to you now as the CEO of JWI, I'm talking to you as a woman who has had the great fortune to have been involved with this organization for years, that I am changed because of JWI and that my children have changed. because my children grew up hearing about issues about violence against women and girls, about the importance to understand and own financial literacy and education, about the importance of seeing women as leaders. They are now allies, advocates. My daughter is a strong woman who I am so, so proud of. And I have to tell you, I would not have known any of these issues, would not have been on my radar had it not been for JWI. And this is what I have seen has been so amazing for the networks we've built for our young women, is that yes, they get to learn from incredible women like Ellen Stone and Abby Greensfelder, but they also get to connect with peers who are like-minded. And they also, at the bottom of it all, is an organization that is about empowering women and girls and is about building a world in which all women and girls can thrive. So what does this mean? So for those of you who don't know, JWI was originally B'nai B'rith Women. So we're 123 years old. And in the 80s, we left B'nai B'rith the same time as ADL and Hillel and BBYO. But around that time, one of our members was shot and killed by her husband. And the mission became focused on ending violence. And so we look at that very holistically. We look to give power to women so that they can control their lives. And that means really understanding what is healthy and what is not. It means educating our young men on what it means to have healthy masculinity and to be a good partner. It means making sure that all women are comfortable with their finances, because a woman who controls their budget controls their lives. And it means putting incredible role models and mentors in front, because you can't be what you can't see. So we are now bringing to women our age to what our daughters are lucky to have. And we are going to have a network that's just for us. And yes, we'll have times that we'll get to bring our daughters or other young women with us that will, if we want to, we'll mentor them, advise them. But we're also going to get together. And I think in this time of COVID, I think there is something that has kept more than 100 of us on Zoom for 2 hours at the end of the evening. And it's because we realize how important it is to connect with other women, how important it is to have women friends. And so we are launching now virtually. It is our hope that when it is safe to do so, we're going to form in-person networks around the country. We have women from all over the country on the phone today. And so I hope you'll join us. We have exciting things planned in October 29th. We are going to be meeting with the director and producer of Surge. You can watch the documentary now. It's out on Showtime. It's going to be streaming on Netflix and a whole bunch of other channels that will let you know where you can watch it. It is about all the women that came forward in 2018 to run for elected office and what it means to run as a woman, to put your name forward in the way they have and what they face and the challenges you face as a woman running for office. And then in December, we have our very exciting Women to Watch Impact Summit. So we are reinventing Women to Watch into a half-day leadership conference. I want you all to join us. It is going to be unbelievably inspiring. It will be on a Friday this year, and we're going to end the day by lighting candles together and then breaking into virtual Shabbat dinners. And we are going to hear from our young women from around the world, including our latest network in Tel Aviv. And so I want you to join us, and we are asking to stay on as a member, that you join by donating to JWI at a minimum gift of $500. And I don't want that to scare anyone off. We can break that into monthly donations of $42. And if you join as a member, you're going to get a ticket to Women to Watch. And of course, if you want to become a sponsor to Women to Watch, you're going to get your membership. And sponsorship means that in November, you can come to our special event with Ruth Zuckerman, who is the founder of SoulCycle and Flywheel, who will be in conversation with Sadie Kurzman, who was the young woman who founded 305 Fitness. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. This is a hard time for women and girls. Our rights are being threatened, and I hope you'll get involved with helping us, with helping to support our children's libraries and domestic violence shelters, with our advocacy efforts, and with getting to know amazing women and being all that we can be. So with that, I want to thank Ellen and Abby, who are unbelievable as always. And I'm so grateful to JWI that you're in my lives, and to my incredible launch network, Heidi Brodsky, Sharon Slotkin, Jeannie Milbauer, Stephanie Nashman, Elise Hauptman, Kim Oster-Holstein, Jeanne Ellinport. Thank you all. And in October, our cocktail is going to be a Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So sign up. Thank you all. Be safe, and I'll see you soon.